One, action.
All right, good evening, everyone. I would like to call to order the Croton Harmon Board of Education work session for February 16th, 2023. Recommended action, the Board of Education approves the agenda as presented. So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor? Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion carries. Now move into new business. Recommended action, be it resolved that the Croton Harmon Board of Education hereby appoints Margaret Posinel, 1.0 FTE special education teacher, as a leave replacement for Janet Cook at the Kiara Van Cortlandt Middle School, effective March 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2023, at an annual salary of $65,261, MA Step 1 program.
Second.
On the question? All in favor? Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion carries. Recommended action, be it resolved that the Board of Education of Croton Harmon Union Free School District hereby authorizes and approves the stipulation of settlement for student number 20247, together with all terms therein, and be it further resolved that the superintendent of schools is hereby authorized and empowered to execute the stipulation of settlement for student number 20247, and the superintendent of schools is further authorized to make all actions necessary to effectuate the terms of the stipulation of settlement.
So moved.
Second. On the question?
Give me just a moment.
Mhm.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain, motion carries. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the agreement for services between H.M. Bigley Consultants and the Croton Harmon School District as the Child Nutrition Program Consultants for the 2022-2023 school year, and the development of bid specifications for the 2023-2024 school year. So moved.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, just procedural, this I understand is a non-competitive bid because it is for professional services. But we had two respondents, as you said, and I am not sure under policy, under law, whether we must identify the unsuccessful bidder.
I do not believe so. It was an RFP and you're only required to appoint,
Okay, without identifying
Yeah.
all the bidder. Okay, thank you.
but that is public information if anyone. We actually put that on BidNet, which is the New York State bidding system, so that information is also uploaded there. If anyone would like to review the content.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion carries. All right, we'll now move into donations. Recommended action that the Board of Education gratefully accepts a donation from the Croton Harmon Education Foundation, CHEF, in the amount of $500 to publish the autobiographies of the 11th and 12th grade bilingual or English language learner students.
So moved. Second.
Is that Theo?
Yes.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain, motion carries. All right, well, now we will move into our budget work session, and I will turn it over to Superintendent Walker and Ms. Harrington Cohen to get us started.
Thank you. Thank you. So good evening. So this evening, we're going to review our building level budgets. That's also known as the fun part. But first, I'm going to be providing an update on our revenue budget and also the state aid update on the executive budget. Oops. Okay, so before we begin, I just wanted to review some of our events to date. So on December 1st, we did an overview of our budget calendar and some of our preliminary discussions with our building leaders. Then on January 12th, we provided an overview of our guiding principles, strategic goals, and budget priorities. And we reviewed some of our preliminary revenue and expenditure assumptions. February 2nd, we gave a brief budget update based on the governor's proposal that was distributed on February 1st. And then this evening, we will review our revenue again and our building level budgets. And this is a look ahead, and I'll talk a little bit about that later in the session. So state aid and budget updates. So the governor put forth her recommendations on February 1st and released her executive budget. It is preliminary, of course. It still needs to go to the One House budgets and then to the final enacted budget. So One House is in, we met with them today, probably March. They said maybe mid-March. And then the enacted budget ideally on April 1st. So some of what the governor's recommendations, she was supporting full restoration of foundation aid. So foundation aid is one of our largest aid categories. This is the final year of the full restoration. I'll talk a little bit about that later in the presentation as well. It's essentially, this aid restoration essentially reconciles the difference between what was promised and calculated in the original aid formula to what we actually received, which was considerably less. This would be the new base for our foundation aid. And the timing couldn't be better. Next, high impact tutoring, foundation aid set aside. So generally foundation aid is an aid category with no strings attached. It's for the overall operating budget for student needs. This, there's very little information on it at this point, but the proposal says that this is a set aside. So this is a portion of our foundation aid that needs to be allocated to high impact tutoring to address any learning loss throughout COVID. She has stated that she would like to enhance student mental health services through the budget. Also, there's been a universal pre-K expansion. So for Croton Harmon, we are looking at possibly 79 students eligible for pre-K within our community. This universal pre-K was implemented 2 years ago. Many districts did not take part in the funding. So there's excess funding available for districts like Croton Harmon who implemented the program immediately. So we are working as a team to meet the expectation of these new potential numbers of an additional 23 students. So this is a wonderful, wonderful benefit to our community, and we were very thankful to see that new allocation. She's also recommending zero emission school buses, so EV only purchases by 2027. So by 2027, if you're purchasing a new vehicle, it needs to be electric, and then a fully converted fleet by 2035. Also recommending a retiree income waiver extension. So the current retiree waiver is through 2023. This is an extension to reemploy some of our retirees to help fill some staffing shortages within education. Some new reporting requirements. They are rather extensive, the proposals at least. I met with some regional school business officials today and the legislators, and I will tell you that they were all, for the most part, not in favor of a lot of these reporting requirements. Seems like we keep getting new reporting requirements with nothing falling off. Some of them are duplicative and just difficult to manage in the school district. So pre-K reporting for all of our existing students and then other pre-K age children that live in your community. So that would entail a little bit of work. Then an extensive zero emission reporting that would require participation of local utilities, infrastructure, consultants, labor unions, etc. Also, New York State grown food procurement. So we would have to quantify how much we're purchasing through New York State, what we're doing to secure those New York State grown supplies for our school lunch program. And then transparency reporting, which is set to expire this year, but she is recommending that we continue it. This is very, very similar to the ESSA reporting that we're required to do. However, it's very similar, but the construction of it and the preparation for it is very different. So it ends up in the same place, but it's a lot more difficult to handle. So they're recommending that this be removed. Other items worth noting, a potential freeze in the November database. This would not be beneficial to districts. It would lock us into preliminary numbers as opposed to our exact expenditures. The legislators were not in support of that either. Then there was a ban on fossil fuel equipment upgrades in existing buildings, so that by 2035, any new equipment would have to be free of fossil fuels, and then all buildings would need to be fossil fuel free by 2025. That's 2029, which is a tough. Pardon?
No,
No, it's new buildings.
New
Oh,
buildings.
new building.
Yeah.
Oh, new building. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that's going to be a heavy lift for districts. But we've been told that we're going to get the support that we need to do that through the governor's budget. What was not in the executive budget, universal free meals. Based on our discussions today, it is not likely that that is going to be in the budget, even though in fact, it's less than, I think, 0.5% of the budget in monetarily. It's a big number. It's really only a small percentage of the budget, but the sense was that was not going to be increased. That was not going to be continued. Also, we're requesting an increase to unrestricted fund balance. Right now, we get 4%. 4% is equivalent to about 2 weeks of expenses for a school district. So that is not a feasible amount for us in reserve, especially considering some of what we have ahead. Relief to districts covering maintenance costs for residentially placed students. So if we have a residentially placed student that could potentially cost upward of $100,000, we are required to pay almost 60% on top of that for maintenance costs. So one residential student could cost upwards of $160,000. That cost used to be absorbed by the county, and then slowly they're laying that responsibility on to the district. There was nothing in regard to the revision of the state aid formula. The state aid formula is archaic and backwards, even though we have this restoration coming. There is a strong push to revise that formula. Funding for prior year state aid claims, which has a big impact on a lot of students, a lot of districts. And then lastly, increased cap for BOCES aidable salaries. So right now, if we get any services through BOCES that are labor intensive, if there's any salaries above $30,000 are not aidable. So we're requesting to push that cap a little bit further. Everyone looks really excited here. So revenue.
Before you go on,
Yeah.
yes, I just thought for the board and the public, Sarah and I can report that we both attended, I think both attended the West Part discussion with legislators that was held last Thursday, virtually, and attended the Capitol Conference on Friday morning, in which almost all of the things that are missing and the things that schools would like to see in the budget were discussed. And certainly the Shelley Mayer and Mike Benedetto, the respective committee heads for the education committees in the Senate and the House, indicated that they thought at least some of those would be addressed in the one House bills that come from each chamber in March. Doesn't say what's gonna happen from April, but those are on the radar in the legislature.
Yeah, and they were very open to hearing some of the challenges that districts are facing, and I think their eyes were opened a little bit to some of our issues, so we're hopeful that some of these will be addressed. Any other questions? Okay. So revenue projections. These are state aid projections. Again, these are based on state aid runs. There will be new state aid runs coming out probably closer to the last week in February. So we'll await those. We have our foundation aid, which is, we're looking at a 50% increase in that number from 3.4 million to 5.2 million. That would bring us to full restoration. So that would be the basis for all funding in this category moving forward. Transportation aid is up slightly due to an increase in our aid ratio and some increased costs as we move out of COVID. Public's excess costs, I won't go through each one of these. Building aid, so this is based on the building level projections. This is not, I believe the governor's budget has us in at 1.6 million because it's not accounting for a number of final cost reports that we have in the state. So each building project that we have, a number of requirements are required, one of which is the final cost report. So this is a projection. It's fairly conservative, but we have about 10 final cost reports at the state that have not yet been evaluated. So there could be some disallowances in some of those costs, some maximum cost allowance screens. So we have projected here, based on what was submitted, about $2.1 million. Then we have our BOCES aid, hardware and technology and software. So we're looking at a total state aid increase of about 2.1 million. So that's very positive for us. And again, as I mentioned, that's ideal timing because this is the year 23-24 is when all of our federal grants fall off. All of our ARP and CRISA grants fall off. So that COVID support and funding will no longer exist. So these are two factors that I'll discuss briefly that are components of the tax cap or the allowable tax levy. So we have the tax-based growth factor that measures brick and mortar growth and development within the community. And that number that is on 2023 is 1.0039. That's a slight increase from last year. That number can change between now and March 1st. So we need to check the website regularly. If it changes, that will also change our tax cap formula. Then we have the allowable levy growth factor. This is the lesser of 1.02 or the inflation factor. So the gray lines are the inflation numbers. It's at about a little over 7 now, but when the slides were produced, it was about 8%. But yet we are being held at the 2% maximum growth factor. So this is our compressed calculation for the allowable tax levy. So the allowable tax levy is also referred to as the tax cap. It's the benchmark for setting our tax levy. I'm going to go through each of these lines. This is a prescribed formula by the state, by the Office of the State Controller. This was implemented in 2000. I think the law was 2011, but fully implemented in 2013. Every district has its own tax cap figure. There are some districts that are negative. There are some districts, there's actually one district in the state that had 102% tax cap, if you can believe that. So the range varies. Districts that are tax cap compliant with their budget, so if they do not exceed the tax cap, there is a simple majority vote on that Croton Harmon has always stayed within the tax cap, every year since its inception. If you choose to override the tax cap, then a supermajority is required. So I'm going to go through, item number one. If you see the little red one on the right side of the calculation, that's the tax-based growth factor that I spoke about over here. So we take our prior year levy, multiply it by the growth factor, and then withdraw any pilots or capital exclusions from the prior year. Pilots are payments in lieu of taxes. We did not have any this year, and we are not expecting any for next year. So there will be no impact there. Then you get the prior year adjusted levy. That amount is then multiplied by the allowable levy growth factor, which is the 2%. And then you get your current levy limit. From that, you take any exclusions. The exclusion factor factors in building aid, transportation aid, debt service, capital expenditures through BOCES, and it's its own formula within that. So based on our formula, the district is looking at a proposed tax levy increase of about 1.1 million. And that is a 2.69% factor. And again, these are very preliminary because of all of the components in the calculation and because we do not have an enacted budget, et cetera.
Quiz on that algorithm later for all of you.
Gonna keep everybody awake here. Okay, so this is a much broader view of our revenue. So on the left side, we have some letters and numbers. The top portion of this slide represents revenue that we have somewhat control over-ish, not really. But so we have county sales tax. So we are projecting a larger increase. We had under projected last year based on our weaker COVID numbers. So we're projecting an increase of about 225,000. Interest earnings are very positive right now, so a huge increase there. This year we budgeted about 12,000. I think 2 years ago we earned about 11,000 on our investments. So this is a big change, a very positive change for us. Then we have building use fees, which are stable, and other revenue projections, which are insurance recoveries, tuition, etc. So that's our non-state aid. Then item number 2 is our total state aid, which we just discussed, upward of 2.1 million. And then we have the district's portion, which is our fund balance allocation and our reserves. So we are projecting at this point potentially about 2 between our reserves and fund balance, about 2.4 infusion of district funds, and then adding to that our allowable levy, giving us a total revenue budget of 56,711,496. Again, just a projection. And I did just want to point out, if you look at the graph, we have 77% in the tax levy and 17% in state aid. So that portion is out of the district's control. It's governed by the state and the tax cap. And then the other portion we have is fund balance and reserves. So, any questions so far? No, everybody up? Some unknown variables that will be determined in the future. The final tax cap. So once those formula components come together, we'll have a more clear picture of that. But that is March 1st. So we need to submit that to the state by March 1st. Our final state aid allocation, our actual enrollments. So that would affect staffing. Certainly our special education students and in new English language learners could impact some of our spending and staffing. Unanticipated expenditures this year, which will affect our year-end fund balance. And then the use of any fund balance or reserves, once our budget is finalized, then we'll determine at that point what we'll need to fill any differential between our revenue and budget. And then, of course, any facilities or capital needs that materialize between now and next year that need to be addressed. Some upcoming dates. So on March 2nd, which is right around the corner, we'll have our technology, people personnel services, and co-curricular and athletics presentation. March 23rd will be a budget work session, followed by April 13th, which is the superintendent's budget adoption. And then May 4th, we have our public budget hearing, followed by the annual vote on May 16th, and trustee elections. Question?
Question. With regard to the approximately a little over $2 million to be, at this point, figured to be taken out of the unrestricted fund balance. Is that number in essence the amount that you have calculated would be necessary from the reserves that we have so we don't go over the 4%? Does it kind of work backwards?
It's a little of both. It's the amount that we need to cover the budget expense and then also keep us within the 4% allowable. So it's a win-win.
Okay. Okay, and so in terms of what you discussed before, if we were to use more fund balance than that 2.056 million,
Which we have previously.
which we have previously, we would be in a situation, we may be lowering the tax levy, not tax levy. However, we will have less in reserve for any emergencies that may happen because we didn't lower than 4%. Right? Okay. And I'm assuming that this is without consideration at this point for what monies may be retained at the end of the year that may be distributed into either unrestricted fund balance or certain restricted reserves such as capital reserves. Okay.
So we are compiling fund balance projections every month, sometimes mid-month, depending upon, the month. Like certainly we will be doing that in March. March we'll probably do 2 fund balance projections. And then April, just so that we can get an estimate.
Denise, with respect to the zero emission school buses, I know that the governor's recommendation is to have EV only purchases and to have everything converted by 2035. But is there any discussion regarding upgrading current facilities and some of the problems that we've discussed with getting Con Ed to come out and even be able to charge these vehicles if we could find them?
That was a large topic of our discussion today, because again, Croton is leading the charge. We're the only district in the county that has an electric school bus, with the exception of White Plains, which was provided one through the city, and they do not own their own fleet. So that is a big concern, especially since Con Edison has a lot on its plate right now. So that is a concern, and we've been told that there will be funding provided to support that. The legislators today also indicated that they would speak to the utility companies on our behalf and work with them to work with us. I think that this requirement, this new mandate, would put an added burden on them, which would penalize us in the end, because we need their support with building up our infrastructure as opposed to filing reports and so forth. So yes, there is a lot of discussion about it. I don't think that it and the issues that we're
That's
facing.
my takeaway from that, is that everyone wants to purchase EV vehicles, which I think we're all in favor of for the most part. But it's the infrastructure surrounding that, I worry about that burden on the district and on other districts, frankly.
And that has been that was a big topic on the legislative forum with all the county legislators, and I imagine Steve and I will be meeting with our district legislators tomorrow in a forum, and I expect that will also be a fairly big topic of conversation. So I think the legislators are beginning to understand that it is a very, like, the logistics of it. That there needs to be a lot more support for
Yes.
districts to really work out the logistics of everything.
And not
because
just
it is-
mandate
it's-
vehicle purchases,
Correct.
because it's a huge process for everybody and it impacts everything.
So there was money earmarked in the bond that was passed in
Yes.
November. But again, there's no sort of guidelines on how that money will be.
Correct.
So,
Well, and I would just add to that, it's also, and this was discussed during the priorities, Westbrook priority meeting that I attended on Monday. It's also the fact that even if you have the money, if you don't have the support of and the resources of either the NYSERDA, Energy Research and Development Agency, which I understand is going to be the lead agency for the state to implement EVs, and the support of utilities to do the things that we need. Right? It's not going to happen. There's a district upstate that same year we bought our first electric school bus. They bought 6 electric school buses. Bethlehem. And then the year after, they didn't buy any. And the reason was they couldn't get the charging capacity into their transportation facility to be able to charge the buses.
Yeah.
And so I think people are starting to hear that, but we
Glad
have,
it's a conversation.
we have to, I think, as, the advocates, as, you folks will do tomorrow and, we've been doing and will continue to do, have to impress upon everybody in the legislature and in the governor's office what this all, what it all means and what we need to be successful on something that conceptually everybody will be saying.
I got a call from Dana Levenberg's office today after our meeting and had a lengthy conversation with her chief of staff, who surprisingly and wonderfully knew a lot about it. So she was involved in a process in her former work that involved some electrification. So she was very knowledgeable. I invited them to the district with Superintendent Walker to just tour our site, and they were very open and excited. They're actually meeting with the Department of Transportation next week, where they'll talk about some of the stringent requirements through the Department of Transportation for New York State school buses and the conflict with some of the electric vehicles that are out there and available for us. So they are fighting hard on our behalf. And I think especially for the woman I spoke with today, she has a very clear understanding about the challenges.
One of the things which I think is really not on the front burner, but something that I would suggest we might do at some point. You talked about the fact that as of 2035, we will be in a situation that we cannot do any fossil fuel related upgrades to building systems. I'm thinking here of boilers and such. Water heating units will be that have a useful life. I think between our architects, although I know they're working on other things, and our internal staff, I think we as a board should be geared up to understand that. And perhaps whether it's through, some upgrades before everybody's got to do it, if we're moving to heat pump technology, that maybe we're looking at, the boiler's got a useful life of 5 years, maybe we need to plan to upgrade, fit it within our capital expenditures, and get the ball rolling before perhaps prices go up or availability is lessened. Not for this year, but just something to put in the tickler file.
That is definitely in the forefront of our team's mind.
So, in general, how are you feeling about this budget?
Very positive, very positive. I mean, the aid component alone. So our foundation aid was increased because of the restoration function piece, but also because the CPI factor. So the CPI is so high. So if you looked at what our aid was last year, what we were supposed to get compared to this year, it's considerably higher. Also, our district, and this is confusing, I wasn't going to say it, but because I was talking about how our tax base growth factor went up, but our district wealth actually went down because it's based on a different year. So we have a lot of things based on different years. So because our district wealth went down, that our poverty numbers went up, which also brought additional aid for us. But I am feeling positive. The universal free meals was something that I think a lot of people were hoping would continue. So what we're proposing is that, okay, if we can't do the universal free meals, maybe they can raise the income threshold so that right now it's considerably lower. What if we up it to kind of capture some of those people that are in the middle and not quite below that poverty level. So I think they will consider that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes my drive.
That's not dry.
Yeah, I like it.
Very interesting.
I was extremely engaged.
All right, who's next? Let's go to the fun stuff.
So I will just say a couple of things briefly, and then I'm anxious to turn it over to our outstanding colleagues, leaders who are here this evening. First, Denise, thank you, as always, for being such a phenomenal steward of this process and our district's finances in general. Really the engine behind the budget process. And I think, as the board knows well, Denise has a remarkable and really unique ability to take remarkably complex information and make it accessible to all of us in the room who aren't school business officials, right? So thank you for that. I think that engenders a lot of trust and support from the community and within the team as well. So thank you for your leadership. And I would just say that, and I know Denise would agree with this, while there are parts of the budget development process that don't elicit a lot of joy in those of us who are working on it, I think there are tremendous opportunities in the process and how it unfolds. And I think more than anything else, it's because there are times in a year for a school district, and specifically during the budget process, when probably the greatest amount of attention from the community is focused on the school district. And I think there's an opportunity in that for us to talk, as we know, not just about dollars and cents, but about vision and about values. And I think for a member of the community who hasn't been necessarily overly engaged in our messaging and our vision, the guiding questions, the strategic plan, kind of the direction of the district, I would like to think that if they take the time to view tonight's presentation, they'd be able to know already the sense, the essence of the guiding questions of the strategic plan, of the direction of the district, because it will come across in what the board and the community are going to hear this evening. And I think that speaks to the coherence of the vision and the coherence of the team. Both of them, I think, are foundational for the success of the system. So with that said, I'm now thrilled to turn it over to our outstanding building leadership team, beginning with Dr. Duback at the high school.
All right, well, thank you for the.
No, it's all right.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so thank you for the opportunity to discuss how the proposed budget for CHHS next year is part of the journey towards becoming a future focused school and touching all those things we just went through on the slides.
that centers itself on passion, reimagining learning, and fostering well-being, which are all part of our district's strategic plan. I love talking about the high school budgets when different topics, because it's where we can really see where we invest and plan and how that aligns with what we believe in the vision that we're trying to bring to life. So I thought we could start with something brand new that we're actually highlighting this spring, by talking a little bit about participatory budgeting, which is really about students sharing the responsibility for making decisions about how money is spent and incorporating student voice in a truly meaningful way. So I think, as we all know, our school and district values student voice and choice, and we regularly have students lend their voices to committee work and decision-making. So participatory budgeting takes that one step further and essentially gives students control over a portion of the budget to carry out research and develop and implement ideas that they believe will enhance the student experience. So it all starts with a really fun question to pose to students. If you had $10,000, what would you do to enhance the student experience at CHHS? So I'm actually going to turn it over to Molly to talk a little bit about her experience, because she's a part of the team that's been working on this among her many other roles.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so the process of this whole participatory budgeting thing is really extensive. We came up with our own ideas, and then we went through survey responses from the entire student body, and we got a ton of good ideas, and we've been narrowing it down to a few. And now we're going to break that into small groups, and we're going to research more and see which option is like the best, most viable, and makes the most sense. This is something that we ultimately love to continue in the future, because it just 10K every year. I mean, just in terms of the money that a school district has isn't a massive amount of money, but students can really run with it and just improve the lives of students in ways that like administrators just might not have thought of. Some of the ideas right now we're researching are making the rotunda into more of a lounge space, so people have a space to sit that's not the community room, which is not in use, or the library, and it will have nice calm lighting and coffee and tea, and it will be a split in between individual quiet space and people to hang out. I'm going on a tangent. And also another idea was a community garden. Yes, so the process is also a learning experience for everyone involved. You learn how to sort of advocate for yourself through this murky financial stuff, which can be really difficult to break into if you have no experience with it. So yeah, I mean, I've learned so much. I've learned a lot in my board position. So I just want other kids with the right ideas and mindset to like also have those opportunities to learn.
So if you click on in the electronic, if you have the electronic presentation, if you click on the link where it says the idea, you can just get a sense of what the students are now working through. Okay. It's sort of the idea in the text.
Yeah.
So it's several pages long, but you can get a sense of what the students are doing, the kind of research that they are being expected to do to present their business proposals. So they're looking at ongoing maintenance costs, approved vendors, general goals and purpose, how many students this project is going to affect, things like operational and technical feasibility. So they're learning some really interesting skills besides just having a really cool idea. They're learning how to bring it to action. So,
But I think the last page is perhaps the most, I guess, challenging and exciting part.
Yeah.
We can read it, the public does.
sure. So this is where, through all of this work, students are actually doing something really similar to what we're doing here tonight, where we're thinking about how their idea contributes to future focused learning, students developing their passions, and creating a more connected and caring environment at the high school. So they're really doing pretty much the exact same thing that we're doing with the entire budget, but having control over this one piece of it that directly impacts them.
So can I ask on that? You'll have various proposals, which I guess will be through a committee or through student factor Congress, and how will the item or items be selected for implementation?
So we're going to have a panel that's going to make that decision. It's made up of various stakeholders, so students, staff members, and board members. They'll be invited to be a part of this decision-making process. And then anything that's not chosen in a particular year would then get pushed into the hopper for the following year too, because we're hoping that this is, which is why it's part of the budget presentation. I'm hoping that this is going to become a yearly budget item, so that every year a group of students has the opportunity to go through this process. And then also imagine how much change can be made if every year the students go through this process and enact one full project a year. So going back to the other presentation, I think the best summary of it is probably that graphic on the bottom left about shifting from engagement to empowerment. So I think that's really what this is about. It's not just about having a great idea, it's about actually empowering students to bring it to life so that they can see the effects of their work. So this is a budget line in the proposed budget for the high school next year that we're excited to have piloted this year and hopefully make a mainstay of our budget going forward. So the next piece to talk a little bit about is an area that you've heard me talk about many times as we've made incremental updates to the high school, beginning with our library, then the room 213 active learning space, our art room, one of our new art rooms down on the bottom left, the community room where we are now, and most recently in the middle, Miss Valentine's newly redesigned classroom. And of course, you hear a lot about it as we prepare for the exciting work that's part of the capital improvement project. So as a student and teacher, the space you're in not only influences what you can do, but how you actually can teach and learn. And it also influences how you feel about your learning experience. Future focused schools design learning spaces that are comfortable, they're flexible, and they can be adjusted to the kind of instruction. So that space is not just where you happen to be learning, where you happen to be scheduled, but it really becomes an integral part of the learning that you move to match the type of learning you're doing. So this most recent example in the middle of Miss Valentine's classroom allowed her to think through the question, sounds kind of like a simple question. Why do we even have desks in the classroom in the first place? We all went to school, sat behind desks probably all day long. We're sitting behind tables now. And she got to thinking in an active learning environment, in the kind of learning environment that we're trying to create for our students, why do we even need these fixed pieces of furniture that we're putting kids behind? So she experimented at the beginning of this year, and she literally removed all the desks from her classroom as an action research type project. And then as she saw how this transformed her teaching and the students' experiences and the feedback that they shared, we ended up redesigning her classroom into a flexible, comfortable, deskless learning space. And I can't tell you how many students have asked me why all of the classrooms can't be like that. So in the words of one of her students, this has not only helped this has not only helped create a learning environment, you've created a learning environment where comfort is both in the tone of the room, but in its very setup. So students in this class and classes that use some of our other active learning spaces often tell us that it feels like an escape and a very different part of their school day to learn in one of these spaces. So imagine if every kid went into almost all of their classes and walked out feeling that way about their learning environment. And then on a larger scale, classrooms like this are spaces where students are up, they're moving, they're working with one another, they're solving problems, they're engaging in problem-based learning. They're places where students and teachers are reimagining learning and asking, what happens if we try this? And then really trying it. And that's where we start to see the magic happening that we're trying to work on as an entire district. So part of the upcoming year's budget is to reserve enough money to fund about 3 more learning spaces a year to turn them into active learning spaces like this one, like these. So although we're fortunate to be getting so many new wonderful spaces as part of our capital improvement project, it's also important to keep our focus on the continual improvement of our other learning spaces that are not going to be impacted by those projects. And to make sure that we have an ongoing plan to take steps each year, so that in some time, our entire building will eventually embody the kind of teaching and learning spaces that we want for all of our students and staff. So the next piece to highlight are some student learning opportunities. So this next piece of the budget is all about student opportunities that will allow more student voice and choice, reimagined approaches to how courses are designed, and new interdisciplinary team taught courses. So this part of the budget primarily entails adding a new teacher to our science department, as well as increasing FTE in art by 0.4, so that we will now have 3 full-time art teachers at CHHS. So this relates to 2 particular staffing positions, but this kind of staffing addition is not just about sectioning and matching student requests to teachers and class sizes and things like that. So while through our budget, we are going to do all of that and meet our student requests and make sure that they have access to the courses they want and need. This increase in staffing is directly connected to reimagining learning in our future-driven system. So this increase in staffing and some other investments we've made over the last 2 years will allow for 4 new interdisciplinary team taught courses to come to fruition in the 24-25 school year. And so those preliminarily are going to include a fully team taught 9th grade humanities course, where students will earn English and social studies credits, a team taught 11th grade self-contained humanities course, where similarly students will get English and social studies core credits, a really exciting integrated 2-year physical science and math course that will allow students to get a combination of earth science, chemistry, physics, so all your physical sciences, plus components of Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and trigonometry credits. So it's hard to imagine just hearing that description, but you can think of it a lot like math, science, or STEM academy type model, a very integrated model. And then finally, a bioethics course that will fulfill an English and life science credit for students. So these 2, I'm probably not doing these courses justice, but these courses are going to entail 2 or more content area co-teachers working together over longer periods of time than a typical class period. And they'll be developing passion-based classes and courses that embody the things that we know are part of a future-focused system. So things like revamping assessment and grading practices, project-based learning, designing curriculum around applications versus finding applications that fit the curriculum. And these courses are coming to life based on teacher interest and passion, which is really how we started the planning process for all of them, which is really different than how you typically start a planning process based on what the state tells you you have to do. So starting with teacher passion, and at the same time, it allows students to have choice in their learning experiences and really experience what it means to be in a class that's not a silo. It's not a separate math, a separate science, a separate English. And as an added benefit, the inherent daily professional development of team teaching will exist for somewhere around 8 to 10 high school teachers every single day. And that's really invaluable daily professional development in that role. So as we continue our strategic planning process, I'm hoping that these will only be the beginning of interdisciplinary teaching and learning opportunities, but I'm feeling very happy that we have the ability to start with 4 in the very near future. And next budget area to highlight is also something that you've heard me talk a lot about, but I think it's very important and worth continuing to highlight. So this budget vision continues to support our 2 pedagogical coaching positions at the high school, which have truly been a game changer for us. So as we continue to move in that future focused system, teacher leadership really needs to be at the core. And pedagogical coaching is one of the ways that we really can value it. So as you've heard already, we're encouraging all members of our learning community to explore passion. The coaches are an integral part of supporting their colleagues and bringing their vision to life. They're sharing new ideas and helping create a culture of thoughtful risk taking. You can see in that yellow Post-it note on the right, that's just a fraction of some of the work, big and small, that our coaches are doing with teachers. This actually just came from a snapshot of 1 month of their work. So it's just a piece, but you can see.
Sorry, there was a link there. There's a link there, and I clicked on the link because.
That's a video of students working in that room.
O'Neill.
Gives us a link.
Some of the work that's listed up there is, something as small as a pedagogical strategy that can be used across content areas like hexagonal thinking. And something as big as helping teachers redesign learning spaces and developing choice-based professional development activities. So we're not just saying, go figure out your passion on your own. We're saying, we're here to support you with coaches. We're going to help you bring it to life. And continuing to invest in these positions is really, at a larger scale, an investment in the talent and expertise of our faculty and demonstrating our value on teacher leadership as a system. So in reflecting with our coaches, the value of them teaching in a 0.4 in this position, in addition to coaching, has really come up as a very important aspect of the model. And they feel like it allows them to practice what they preach, and that allows them to also engage in the same kind of thoughtful risk taking that they are doing with their colleagues. So that's something that we definitely will continue. And that graphic in the center of the slide represents the larger impact on the system. So starting at the bottom by investing in a culture of continual improvement and creating systemic change that focuses on short and long-term needs of our faculty. These positions, I think going up to the ladder a little bit, also represent internal career growth for our faculty. So in teaching, there's not always options to advance or try something new without changing your position. As lovely as being a school administrator is, it's not necessarily something that every single teacher wants to do. So this is a way to have kind of like an internal growth, internal career ladder for people. It also really helps to multiply talent by investing in our faculty. So we're just about a year into having the model at the high school. And I can say with certainty that the positions have impacted our culture and teaching and learning in a very short period of time already. And I think you will hear later tonight from CET how that this has potential to also grow into some of the other schools. And there's just the last slide for me, I promise. So the last piece that I just want to highlight is the student and family support and connection part of our budget. So as we, again, reimagine learning and a culture of well-being, our district questions about meaningful engagement with all members of our community, as well as families whose first and primary language is other than English, is a really key piece of our budget. So our budget will continue to support a full-time ENL teacher, which is a relatively new development at CHHS over the last 2 years. Previously, we split an ENL position between the high school and the middle school, and that's already proven to have priceless results, having a full-time ENL teacher here. The budget also continues to support our very well utilized Flex program and our AIS support structures, as well as our full-time student assistance counselor, who is an integral part of our student support team. And as you know, this year is our first year of running our Heritage Spanish Speakers course, which has been going phenomenally well. And seeing how the course has become a place where many of our students are able to shine and celebrate their heritage and their skills, we're very pleased to be able to continue offering it, but also to grow it into an option for a 2-year sequence beginning next year, so that students will have the opportunity to have that experience for 1 or 2 years before going into whatever other language level they're ready and able to pursue. And new for the upcoming school year, and we're actually piloting it this spring as well, We'll have a new partnership with LUCA, which stands for Latino U College Access, that will help support our families who primarily speak Spanish to understand and navigate the complexities of the college system. And this organization's or local organization led by experts, and everything is done completely in Spanish. So for example, this March, in just a few weeks, we're hosting a first event with LUCA. It's a workshop called Pathways to College. And that presentation is going to be open to all middle school through high school families. And next year, we're going to be adding a workshop on paying for colleges that's more designed for high school age students and families. So we're really excited to have a budget that can support this level of specialized support for our families to help them understand, navigate, and make good decisions for their families. So that wraps up the vision in the high school budget.
What's that?
Never.
Oh, okay, so this is, I'll speak to this. This is an overview. Can't see that one. I don't have my slide. This is an overview of the high school budget that you can see. Thanks, John. Teaching represents 72% of the budget, and then there are various other components there. I did just want to point out, so the reduction, so occupational education, so that's our career and tech program through BOCES. So that is a weighted average formula that looks at a multi-year period of enrollment. So that is not that we're reducing the number of spots in that program, but it's just a component of, it's just a function of the formula that BOCES uses. So we saw some nice refunds there. And then also the social work services, which appears to be down 249%. That is more of a function of the 22-23 number, which was actually over projected. And the social work services component includes a BOCES portion. So that is a category that includes also BOCES. So those services were not utilized this year. So we're going to be refunding that part of the budget. So that category appears to be less, but it is not. It services one full-time student assistance counselor. So that was funded through our federal grant this year. Next year it's being absorbed by the high school budget. Everybody have a chance to look at that? Any questions?
Can you talk about some of the increases?
Sure. So curriculum development and supervision, John, you may want to speak to that. That is part of John's budget, but because of transparency reporting and stuff, it needs to be allocated to each building. So you'll see a comparable increase in that line in all subsequent budgets, but
Sure. So curriculum development is really the process through which we go out and we are thinking about how we get better at the practices with which we're engaged. In our case, we are looking really at a lot of future focused practices. And when you're looking to really gain information and look at best practices, you want to be able to have the ability to send teachers and administrators to those places that are really innovative and learn from them. So we actually hadn't been doing much of that historically, especially during COVID. Those line items were reduced. We're at a place right now that we really want to be sure that if there are practices that we want to learn from elsewhere, that we have the ability to, to compensate and travel and see those places.
Field trips for the adults, yeah.
And then supervision and teaching, and remember, these are components that are that have multiple categories within them. So it's salaries and staffing, it may be some BOCES services. We can slice this up a number of different ways, and we probably will in a different way at one of our next presentations. So then we have
Just teaching, because it's the largest increase. Is the most important, I think, expenditure the school has. Just maybe a little bit more clarity behind that would be helpful, just for the next round.
Right, so that includes a lot of the new teaching positions that we have. Also, when our budgets were projected last year at this time, our salaries, so we have lane changes, so teachers that go for additional certifications and so forth, they have lane changes, so they have a lane change which affects this year, and then they also jump up quite a bit in the subsequent year. So that is reflected there. Computer assisted instruction, I don't want to talk too much to that because that is going to be the highlight of next week's next board's presentation, but within that, let's see. We have some video production Macs that are being added. We have some flat screens, we have some Chromebooks, and also, did I say engineering? Engineering and video production. And Jared will get into that.
And Jared's interactive gym, that's part of the capital.
That's part of the discussion for the capital.
Yeah.
And then we have health services and psychological services and co-curricular activities, which is up
Thank you.
6.7%. You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I guess I don't have a question as much as an observation in terms of, we talk a lot about the monetary value and a lot of these and how much it costs, but I couldn't help but think when you were talking about the pedagogical coaching and how it offers teachers an opportunity to kind of improve and continue their professional development, that, we've heard a lot as a board in the past year about what a desirable place it is to come and work in the Croton Harbor Free School District. So I think that there's also an element of adding value to the district by making these investments that we don't talk about when we're talking about expenditures. So to the extent that you're making this a great place for our students and our faculty, this is a wonderful investment, and I just want to thank you guys for your efforts as administrators.
Nice.
Thank you, Dr. Duback. Now on to PVC. I'm sorry, did I miss a question? Nope.
There was no question.
I was, yielding that question.
It's not impressive.
That's just
Team
one school.
PVC, Mr. Blockett and Mrs. Kelly.
So no matter what order we go in schools, we're always. Was hoping when I opened up the slide to see us going first and last, so it'd be like,
If we started with a Halloween costume, you guys would go.
There you go.
I don't know if it was the best, it was the most beautiful.
That's true.
So anyway, tonight we want to talk about the PVC budget, and it could be best understood and characterized, the financial allocations under two headings. Those that are mainstay of the budget process, these are things that we've been working on for years and practices to ensure that the middle school level of our district serves the students in an essential role as a bridge between a wonderful elementary school and a stellar high school. And then the other category are things that are new or newer to our budget and this budget cycle in particular. In both of these categories, I think you'll see that there's clear and strong connections to the guiding questions and the goals of the strategic plan. In a future-focused school, the budgeting of programs, materials, equipment must align with the instructional approaches that are most engaging, help students develop essential skills, and provide students with transformational learning experiences. The development, proposal, and fulfillment of a school budget allows school administrators and staff to operationalize goals and define the school's most urgent priorities, and demonstrate that the middle school's commitment is to the mission and vision of the district. So for the 2023-24 school budget, we want to speak to that alignment and the guiding questions and seek how we seek to support for students in a future-focused education that will certainly lead to their growth and their realization of their passions and dreams now and in the future. Now, we start with this slide here. When we consider what it means to be future-focused or a future-focused school that fosters risk-taking and meaningful connections between all of our community members, we don't want to give people the impression that we're abandoning the tried and true practices of the middle school or the philosophy, but quite to the contrary, that our budget proposal, when viewed through the lens of the guiding questions, translates to a deeper commitment to past budgetary investments and an affirmation of the most important underpinnings of what it means to be a transformational middle school. So let us begin at looking at how we plan through this budget to solidify and extend one of the middle school's most favorable programs and responsible for bringing the future-driven lens right up to the forefront on a daily basis, the Innovation and Design Lab. I've reported this to you on many occasions in my board reports about how this program has been transformational for our students. This budget proposal aims to extend this learning to all students at PVC. This means that students will participate in design thinking, innovative projects, and application of 21st century skills during each year of their experience at PVC. Currently, that is not the case. This budget proposal strives to extend this learning experience to all students in grades 5 through 8. Each year, students will be part of a program that builds on the previous year's learning, their discoveries, and their commitment commits itself to creating a future-driven mindset in our students and a disposition through an environment that thrives on innovation, problem-solving, student agency, and the pursuit of interest and passions driven by curiosity and inquiry. By adding a 1 FTE in this area at the middle school level, we will ensure that not only can all students count on this learning opportunity each year, but that we will be able to also offer a fine arts program as well. That's an FFA, right? It was in Denise's thing, right under the allowable levy growth factor. Okay, so this position will enable our current teacher in this area to have a thought partner and a collaborator to further grow the program and the impact that it has on the students in the school. I say this because currently the Indie Lab is a center for collaboration and innovation that permeates throughout our school. We are confident that having this program with the right amount of personnel will continue the innovation of instruction, the pursuit of passions, and the creation of a school environment in which students' ideas, prototypes, and curiosity are no longer relegated to paper and pencil, but brought to life and are manifested in different ways and different products as they become the creators of their visions. Those creators are middle school students. Next slide, please. The next slide represents the instructional technology that we will be adding as part of this budget. Some of these things, again, were seen in previous budgets like the Prometheans, but I want to also, and the one-to-one devices, but I will speak about some of the new additions. This area of the budget proposal is a perfect example of how we're building on past investments and will continue those while. What happened?
Neil.
All right, I'm gonna continue because I'm timing everyone and it just takes the longest and I want to add this to my time. No. So we're gonna continue our one-to-one devices. The one-to-one devices ensures that students, each student is provided with an equitable position at the school in that each student, no matter where they live, or where they come from, or what language is spoken at home, that they have the tools necessary to succeed and make a meaningful connection in defining their future. This budget proposal also continues to phase out the older technology and replace it with Promethean screens. Right now, we still have some smart boards, they're aging and they're waning in effectiveness. This transition is successfully underway and will hopefully be completed next year. And now to some new things. Z-Space, as you see up in the right-hand corner, our budget proposal includes a technological addition to the middle school. Z-Space is an interactive three-dimensional device and software that will allow students to learn in a hands-on and minds-on way. Students will be able to enjoy immersive and interactive learning that will help them to develop 21st century skills that we value now and will be essential to their future success. Imagine in a science class, the dissection of a deer heart. So you come in one day and the teacher has a deer heart. And so you dissect it, you label it, and you're done. With this type of program, that deer heart comes out of the screen as a holographic figure, and you're able to do that not once, but revisit it time and time and time again without the blood.
That part was pretty cool when I did it first.
I agree. So now we're gonna extend that to every day, okay?
It's the real thing.
And again, Molly's vision and the actual way that was done is now supplanted by something that you can manipulate, that you could dissect multiple times over the course of time. Imagine students creating prototypes of products, not just drawings, but real images, blueprints, and renderings like professional designers and engineers do. If you're familiar with the work of our students in locations like the Indie Lab, imagine what our students will do with this type of powerful technology. What happens is that you use a stylus to manipulate the image, to turn it, to take it apart. It's called Z-space because it's operational on the Z-axis, meaning you have, it's a 3D image. So moving on, I ask also that you imagine the capabilities to offer students this opportunity to create high quality products. And that speaks to the e-color printer there. So right now with the e-color printer, what we'd be able to do is kids will actually be able to make professional grade products. And I'll give you an example. A young man at our school worked in the Indie Lab to redesign an EMS logo where he volunteers. He did a wonderful job. I'm thinking with products like this, he will be able to do a fully professional product. And how many times our kids come to us and say, we want to create this and we want to create that. We will have the technology and the resources to be able for them to bring it to true fruition.
I think we talk so much about publishing finished products too and work, and that doesn't have to just be in terms of writing or something like that, right? So perfect example of another way for them to publish what they're proud of.
Good. Let's go to the next slide.
That's me. So I get to talk a little bit about flexible and supportive space tonight, and I think you'll see that that's a common thread in all three of the schools. And I get to echo much of what Dr. Duback said earlier about the high school active learning spaces. So really, I think our goal at PVC is to create these future focused spaces in a building that was built in 1939. So definitely need to breathe some new life into these spaces, like many of our board members got to see the other day on our recent learning walk in the library, right? So we can reevaluate how these spaces can be used to foster collaboration, to promote innovation, and of course, ensure the well-being of students and staff. So when we look at how the learning environment looks and how it feels, right, we know that it has an impact on how a person feels about that, right? That person's well-being, and that is a priority to us. I think moreover, we want to update and create common learning spaces that will help students explore, innovate, and take thoughtful risks, which is so much of what we've been talking about. So up on those slides, you'll see some examples of the spaces at the middle school, one classroom and two common areas that we want to increase, I think, more use by students and staff to learn, to grow, and to further this curiosity. So we know that our students and teachers are excited about these potential changes and that this budget will clearly support these endeavors. So we're looking forward to those spaces.
And again, after the library was done, you want to talk about participatory input. The kids said, why not here? Why not here? Why not here? Next slide.
Yeah, so in summary, I think, we've been talking so much about being future driven and really the future is now. So overall, we want to emphasize the importance that we point out the connection, like Michael said before, that everything that we're proposing through this budget process really does align with the vision of the district, and that we are able really to articulate all the facets of how the budget proposal is aligned with the guiding questions and the goals of the strategic plan. So we want to continue our journey to helping students and staff understand and identify these opportunities in which learning and growth are really leading to fulfillment. So we don't want to just look at our kids through the lens of a grade or an achievement or a stop point, right? We want to steer away from that mentality and really think about what it means to be fulfilled and really focus on how our students are feeling about their experiences at PVC. And so we're going to prioritize self-care of both our staff and our students through some of this work. So that inclusion of the additional FTE that Michael spoke about for art and design affords us our students really an opportunity to explore all of these different avenues for all 4 years while at the middle school. We want to definitely continue to leverage the technology, as you saw, and not merely replace merely replacing pen and paper, but giving opportunities to explore the world around them, to discover their passions and interests, and learn in a manner that truly motivates them. And I think it was at a recent parent coffee that we were talking about passions and that pursuit. And parents honestly ask, well, I don't know, my kid's 10, 11, 12. Maybe they don't know what they're passionate about yet. And that is spot on. And that's why it's our responsibility to make sure that they're having tons of experiences to tap into those and to really discover them. So we want to continue, of course, to lay the groundwork for future successes by creating solid habits of mind through positive routine and working with our staff. We're going to continue to create these laboratories of innovation and those common spaces that we mentioned, and continue to encourage and collaborate with agency, right, and empowering students. So our club listings are going to continue to expand, which is great. We understand and bear responsibilities to our students to really kind of pursue those passions. And so we want to support our faculty and our staff so that they can share in that responsibility as well, to engaging students in many different ways. So I think our budget proposal allows us to maintain those crucial aspects of what it really means to be a powerful middle school, things like teaming, enrichment, intervention, block scheduling, just to name a few, the things that make a middle school. And so that definitely is a priority for us. And of course, we cannot really talk about innovation unless we are sure that our budget supports our children having the basic skills necessary to be able to think innovatively. So I think from all of this and this presentation tonight, it's clear that our budget aligns with the guiding questions of the district and the strategic plan, but also makes it very clear that PVC is the place to be for our middle school students.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Greg. So the budget breakdown, and to build off of some of the things that Nicole spoke about, is this basically represents the maintenance of some of the things that we just love about PVC Middle School. Passionate and innovative teaching faculty that values fulfillment as much as they value accomplishment. A faculty that not only handles adversity well, but one that has innovated in the creation of the best practices and experiences for middle schoolers. Also represents support services. We have 2 counselors, 2 psychologists to ensure the well-being of our students. That's maintained through this. And also supporting our students with the maintenance of a full-time E&L teacher, AIS supports, our summer program, and of course, a growing number of clubs that we're going to talk about at a subsequent meeting. I think it was March 1st, right? Second, I'm plugging it. All right. And of course, equip our facilities with access to closed source databases, our library media specialist, and our vast library collection, and support our students' health and well-being, whether they're in the nurse's office or anywhere else in the building. And Dr. Maisa, you asked Denise Harrington Cohen about how positive she felt about the budget. And I just want to reassure you, sir, that I feel very positive, and I'm going to create a new index. It's going to be the allowable positivity growth factor. Right at the top of that index, sir.
Love it.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Well done. Thank you.
Questions for Michael? Neil?
I'm just wondering, talking about the Indie Lab and the increase in the Indie Lab staffing and therefore provision to every student in every grade. And this is really not so much but listening to our discussions of the high school, transdisciplinary, just what is done in the Indie Lab. And so is there a connection with other units, or other courses that students in the middle school are taking? In
Absolutely.
terms of how, what's taught and then is translated when they go to Indie Lab. And that's obviously not a budget.
And that's,
question,
but it is a budget question, and I'll tell
Okay,
you why it
okay.
is, because one of the things that we have to do in the schedule of a professional who works in the Indie Lab is to provide them with the time that they need to go and collaborate with other teachers and staff members. So for instance, if I was a fifth grade teacher working on landforms and I was trying to do something that was on my fifth grade team that was transdisciplinary, and this is an actual project, the kids came up with the idea that they wanted to create picture books. That's just one group. And that meant the employment of the Indie Lab in designing the pages that could be interactive. You ever see a Robert Zabuda pop-up book where you have the pull tabs and all of that? So there was engineering involved, there was writing involved, there was a whole bunch of science involved. So having these people be able to collaborate and be catalytic in their involvement in the school system is what's important. And it is a budget issue, because if you just stack their schedules with 8 classes a day or 6 classes a day or whatever it was, you'd be limiting the time that they could collaborate with other people. And what I would say that the Indie Lab serves as is there's an in and out factor. There are people that go to the Indie Lab, students and teachers, to accomplish something. And then the Indie Lab goes to them to also accomplish something. And the same thing could be said about our library media specialist. So that's why those interactions, again, I don't know if you could put a price tag on them, but they're invaluable. Does that answer your question, sir?
It does, and I just think the one point that it said, I think it was Anna who said that you can't quantify things that you've been talking about. You really can't quantify it,
It was
but.
me.
It was you. Fine, but thanks, Fred.
I wasn't gonna do.
Is that even though you can't quantify it, but from a budgetary impact and from a health of a system and what we want to do as a system, that really is, the intangible benefit of a budget.
And the same thing can be said about teaming. The fact that we have teaming on every grade level, it's a multiplying force in not only helping kids learn better and helping teachers teach better, but also in the well-being of the students and the teachers, to have the support networks, to know those kids and not to have an entirely departmentalized schedule is really what's important. And it's why I bring it up every year, because I never want that to go away.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate your question.
I have a question with respect to what you had said on the onset of bringing innovation and design to every grade,
Mhm.
every year. Are you talking about expand? I know you mentioned creating a Z space, but are you talking about also expanding the physical space of the?
No.
No, you can do all of
Mhm.
that without.
Indie, if the Indie Lab space is pretty big. It consists of,
Right.
3 separate rooms and so forth. So I definitely think that we can make that work. Plus, we have the art room, and with the Future Facilities Project, we're gonna have a brand new science room in that wing. So we're thinking long-term. And I think you can see how the interactions, the teachers are already talking about it. And, I think it's gonna be great. So in order to help expedite that passage, I was thinking skateboards, which wouldn't be a huge budgetary, implications.
No, but there are policies.
There are what?
Policy, we have a policy.
I don't know, Michael.
Sure.
You take that around.
Neil, if you wanna come over, I got helmet and elbow pads.
There you go.
Just out of curiosity, in that third slide where you have the flexible and supportive space, where is that bottom left-hand space? The top right-hand space is the entrance.
Correct.
Where
And
is
that-
On the other side of the hallway, outside of the gym.
Thank you.
Oh, I thought that's what it was.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
And if you think about that space, it's a really huge space.
Yeah. it is.
Yeah.
We heat it, we clean it. It should be more than just for people to walk through.
Yeah.
Obviously, we chose this design because we think that will allow for smooth egress in that area. But also, as the kids spill out of the 5th grade wing, as they often do, to work in comfortable spaces in the hallway,
Yeah.
now we're gonna have some creature comforts for them.
Yeah, especially thinking about the 5th grade, when kids are going out in the hallway and they're sitting on the floor to do their work together. And that's
I'm also thinking about getting all the instruments from the gymnasium to the museum.
Well, all this is easily moved, it's so easily movable that if a teacher wanted to, the students wanted to pull it apart to make little circles out of it or whatever have you, that's fine. And if you look in the other photo in the upper right-hand corner, you'll notice a stack of cushions, rubberized cushions that go in that container, the dispensary, as I call it. So we're very excited, and you can tell it's very flexible, very supportive.
And you're gonna go with the orange and black this time as opposed to the library motif.
I think so.
Okay.
It's like a hot
Question
rod.
about the Z space technology.
Yes, sir.
I've been looking at the website. Is the plan to, how many of these are you getting? And
So
is it-
we've
is there a
budgeted-
plan to then grow it after?
Yes, that's a great question, Theo. So we plan to purchase 4 of them. We're gonna put 2 in the Indie Lab and have 2 others on carts so that teachers can experiment and turnkey with them. And then we can make our decision how much further we want to go in terms of purchasing.
Thanks.
No, thank you.
Any questions? Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Team PVC. Now for the dynamic duo at CET, Mrs. Bianchi and Mr. Campanaro.
Thank you very much. So Michael mentioned before the order in which we go. I hope you're all still awake at this hour. Be as excited about the sharing of the proposed CET budget as we are. So we are very excited to share the CET budget overview and highlight how it is aligned with our district's guiding questions and the development of our strategic coherence plan. As we talk about our plans for CET, we hope that you see that come to light in our descriptions. With that, I'm going to turn the first part over to Mr.
We're
Campanaro.
looking for slide number 16 for CT, and of course, I would have almost the same intro as Kerry. Just likewise with the high school and the middle school, how all of our budget proposals are really kind of melded and they come from our guiding questions and also the strategic goals of the district. But starting with our first slide, the enhancement of instruction. I remember last year in the spring when we started to talk about our science of reading and studying the science of reading. And last year, we had asked to send 15 of our teachers, our kindergarten teachers, first grade, our AIS teachers, and also our ELL teacher to do some multi-sensory approach reading. That instruction was 30 hours over the summer. It's an intensive program. It's by ISME, which is the Multi-Sensory Education Foundation. And it's really Orton Gillingham, having students learn their literacy in a more tactile way. So after sending those 15 teachers last year, they were actually blown away, not only with the instruction they got, but how when they came to school in September, they could immediately turnkey that to their students. And Carrie and I, throughout the year, we've been visiting our kindergarten classes and our first grade classes. And within weeks to see these little growing readers from day one, learning the routines, but physically using their hands, using crayons, using bumpy boards, writing on the carpet with their fingers, and just using, like we said, that multi-sensory approach, more than one sense to understand literacy was simply amazing. It's been such a big hit that we'd now like to send our second grade teachers. So also administration meets every couple of weeks with our kindergarten teachers, our first grade teachers, AIS, and also Mrs. Cueto. And their ability to invite these second grade teachers into their rooms. So now second grade has an idea what's going on. And this training does go all the way up to second grade. It can even go to third, fourth, and fifth grade. But we'd like to include our second grade teachers on the exact same training that we have. And just to go through a couple of my notes, I have this valuable training includes creating lessons, administering assessments, and preparing teachers to implement these new practices and strategies into their teaching. And we always talk about passion. I don't think you could find an elementary school teacher, especially a primary teacher, whose passion isn't reading. Everybody elementary school loves reading, but especially imagine being a kindergarten teacher, a first grade teacher, where you're having these little ones in your class and their very first experience with reading is being in your classroom. So as far as our teachers, this is what their passion is. So it instantly connects to what our bigger district goals are. And I'm also pleased to announce, as we did a little bit more research with Orton Gillingham, one of the things that they really push is that it's now teaching our primary language teachers here what it means for English language learner to actually learn English. So as you know, our ELL population is growing, and we're very fortunate to have Janet Cueto in our school. But this actual program is teaching our teachers to teach the English language, which I think is just perfect timing and innovative as well. Now, with this science of reading, we also need to look at some of the materials we have. All the materials, or I should say, most materials we have at CET, we've been using for many, many years, and they're fantastic materials. But as my principal keeps reminding me, they're all based on cueing, which means when you're opening up the book, you're looking at a picture clue, or you're finding a different clue or cue within that book to help you read. What we're looking to get is some decodable books where a student can open up and it's a systematic way of learning to read. It starts extremely basic with relying on a gradual and systematic way where you first start out with like a letter and sound, and then you move to a syllable, you move to multiple syllables. So it's grounded in science. And like I said, we've got some wonderful books, but we're also looking to upgrade our books, not only for kindergarten and first grade, but now into second grade as well, so we can have everybody enjoying our science of reading.
Thank you. Next slide. So the next area of the budget that we would like to talk about supporting is the enhancement of teaching and learning. What we would like to do is follow the vision Dr. Duback mentioned. CET plans to follow the vision and pilot the instructional coach position that they currently have at Croton Harmon High School. At CET, we're looking to create a full-time instructional coach position that will focus on capitalizing on our teachers' strengths, not always sending people out for different PD, but capitalizing on what we have in our building. And when you take the time to look at that, it's amazing what we have in our building. But what we lack is the weight, the time, and the means and the facilitating of that collaboration. So the instructional coach that we are hoping this budget will support will provide individual coaching opportunities as well as facilitate professional development for all CET faculty. The instructional coach will help to cultivate and facilitate peer-to-peer intervisitations among teachers to share each other's strengths and broaden instructional practices. This concept will require CET administration to work closely with the instructional coach to create a culture of trust and collaboration where teachers feel comfortable learning from and sharing knowledge and their expertise with their colleagues. We have seen this practice start to develop at CET through the multisensory reading approach that Craig mentioned. We also have seen it start to percolate among our new teachers wanting to go into some more veteran teachers, learning about different practices and approaches. And we also feel that it's an opportunity for other teachers to see innovative practices that are happening across the building. Our goal is really, by proposing this instructional coaching position, our goal is to build capacity in our faculty and develop teacher leaders who are comfortable and open to sharing their strengths and expertise.
And I agree. And we've seen a lot of that peer-to-peer visitation, like Carrie said, with our multidisciplinary approach or multisensory approach for reading, where we have not only kindergarten teachers observing each other, but first grade teachers, K-1 going into their classrooms to see what that continuum looks like. And like I mentioned before, our second grade teachers. And although there's great professional development out there, who better to learn from than your own colleagues and doing it in-house?
We've had a lot of opportunities to talk with our teachers about their pursuits of passion. And so one teacher will hear what another teacher is doing. They'll say, oh, can I come and see that? Can our classes buddy up for that project? So it's happening organically at this point, but to put a structure in place where there's one person facilitating that and helping to build the capacity is really what we're looking to do.
Yeah, and actually, as we go into our house system slide, right?
Yep.
That's the next one.
Yeah.
Just also, I mean, we talk about helping each other out. We talk about doing classroom visits. I think nothing is a better shining example than what we have this year at CET with our house system, where, I know Kerry's mentioned it a bunch of times. We have approximately anywhere from 9, 10, 11 staff members in a house, and anywhere from, say, 68 to maybe 74, 75 students in a house. But that's collaboration. Not only are the students collaborating, but your staff members. And our houses are staffed by classroom teachers, by our one-to-one aides, by our classroom aides, by our clerical, by our custodial. So everybody is learning from each other. And I think as we talk about being innovative and kind of looking into the future, doing a classroom visit, what a better thing to kind of be CET's pride and joy, but this house system where not only do we have kids coming together to help each other out, but we have every single adult in the building there, not only to help the other adults, but the children. As everybody knows, I've been at CET a really long time. I have never seen anything that's transformational like this. So of course, we want to do everything we can to continue our house system going into year 2, going into year 3.
So, to, carry on that conversation, we have had a very successful rollout of our house system to date at CET. Our plan for the first year was to introduce and roll out the house system to all students, faculty, and staff, and provide time and opportunities for the houses to get to know their own members, so because these students will be in the same house, K through 4, we found it very important for them to spend this first year really focusing on getting to know the members of their house. We wanted year 1 to focus on the rationale for creating the house system, allowing our students to become familiar with the house names and the meaning of each house. And we wanted time to develop connections and relationships within their houses. So in year 2, we hope to expand the experience and collaboration beyond our scheduled house meeting days. In this year, we meet as in-house meetings once a month on a flexible Friday. And again, that's about a 2-hour period where the houses spend the time together doing various activities. And just to go off of what Craig said, it's the one time where I see our clerical staff excited to get up and come out of the office. Like normally they spend so much time in those 2 office spaces, but we've had Jean Flandro going and helping out with the House of Honesty. I saw her holding a limbo stick where the kids were cooperatively working on that. Gail Anzavino came in from the House of Mobility and she was like, I was in awe of what those kids were doing and how they were working together. So it's really allowing people to come out of their normal spaces and those little silos like we talk about and really be a part of something much greater at the school. So for next year, though, we want that to extend beyond just the houses getting to know themselves, like within their house, but opportunities for perhaps the House of Empathy to work with the House of Acceptance on something so that we start to make connections outside of just the immediate house. Of course, all students will always be more personally connected to the house that they're in, but we want students to benefit from the character traits that are exemplified by all houses. We want to extend our connections to foster the concept that we may be 8 houses, but we are one family at CET. So in order to sustain the house system, we are reliant on dedicated house leaders putting forth time, effort, and creativity to provide memorable and meaningful experiences for all our students and staff. So we want to support them. We are also starting to think about how we can move outside of the walls of CET and connect with the community, perhaps charitable organizations in the area, and how we can really take those character traits and move them into the bigger community and greater society to help our individuals understand that we have to take care of ourselves within our building, but we need to extend beyond that as well. So that we're hoping that this budget will help to support the sustainability and advancement of our house system.
And just to add to that, I know quite often in this room, we've talked about these silos and looking outside of a silo. So the house system allows us to do that in a few different ways. Number one is scheduling. You picture a school, like schools are always known, you go from one period to another, one block to another. Our house system allows us to kind of dismantle that schedule and just bring every single person in our building together. We also talked about silos as far as roles. Like a child grows up, they see, say, whether it's a clerical in a role, a custodial in a role, a teacher in a role, a teacher aide in a role. This now enables the student, all those roles kind of disappear. Everybody's coming together to help each other out, to lend a helping hand, to be a model. So there's a lot of really great kind of innovative ideas here, which are just happening naturally because of what this system, what the house system offers to our school.
Excellent.
We're ready for the next one?
Yep. Hi.
Hang on, I think I went one extra slide.
That's the right one.
Oh, okay, creating learning spaces. All right, so school beautification, they all look alike, they're the same background. If you walked in the halls of CT lately, or if you've taken a learning walk, you may have noticed what our kind of our main hallway going from our welcome center down to our cafeteria looks like. And Janice from our transportation department has really transformed our hallway. And that's great. It's beautiful. But what Kerry and I enjoy so much about it is what it's done for our students. For the students to sit there and watch Janice go to work. They've watched her put this plan on the wall. They've watched her revise. They've watched her make changes. They've watched her get a little bit upset. They've watched her make changes. This in itself is a learning experience for our students, but what it does, it's just a buzz of curiosity. And that's exactly what you want in the school. You want students to be asking questions. You want to have a buzz of excitement. You want them talking about, like, racing back there the next day to see what progress or what changes have been made. So something as simple as a mural on the wall has really transformed not only to our students, it gives them something to look forward to. And they're also going through, you know, oh, I think that's my teacher there, or I think that's Superintendent Walker, or I think that's my bus driver. Like, and then when they, you know what, I have seen that cat in the neighborhood. It just, you know, gives them a connection to their school, to their classroom, to our community. So that's been wonderful. So we kind of want to capture that and continue that with whether it's other murals. We have teachers in our school who are now looking to purchase painting supplies to do murals outside, to kind of beautify outside, take it outside. We're also looking to do our photographs in the halls. Like, we have a very traditional hallway at CET. We want to kind of break that down and make it an untraditional. We want to have color. We want to have photographs. We want to have students' expressions, teachers, you know, community members all throughout our hall for students to recognize, but even more importantly, get excited about, because that's what school is all about. It's about excitement. So I think as we talk about beautification, it's beautification inside, it's beautification outside. At the end of the day, it's all about the kids. It's all about building community. And they absolutely love seeing these things. Even if there's one different bulletin board put up at school or one different notice, the children are observant. They notice it right away. So I think to have this and have all that color and all that beauty on the wall is really kind of what we want our school to represent.
If I could, so we have, so that Janice standing on that ladder there, that's in the middle of the school day. Kids have become so cognizant of her being there that at first I was like, oh my God, we've got a ladder. We've got, what is that going to be like during transition from lunch and specials? But they are so respectful of her process and her work, and they love to stop and ask her questions, and they're engaging with her. And it really is beautiful. If you go down our main hallway, past the two principals, like our offices and the nurse's office, there's one bulletin board that has a world map on it with animals that are from those areas. And I can't tell you how many students every morning stop, oh, which is your favorite animal? Oh, I like this one. Where is that one? Have you been to this place? Now that thing's starting to fall off the wall because it's been so well loved and so interacted with, but so like to give more opportunities for the kids to come together, share their thoughts, share their ideas, have conversations. It's just a beautiful thing to watch kids interact over something that's displayed in their building, in their space, that's not facilitated by adults and teachers. So it really is a way to just keep our kids engaged, interacting with each other, posing questions, asking questions. It's a beautiful thing to watch.
Janice's interaction with the students and the questions they ask her. I mean, they'll be sitting there, you know, you're trying to find a child, where are they? They're talking to Janice about her artwork. But also it's great for the students to see Janice in a different light. Like I said, she enjoys it as much, if not more than the students. Though also going on that slide, what's our learning space is our library. One of our main learning spaces in our building that, of course, every student visits. I'd say, and I believe I'm going to quote Ms. McManus correctly here, we have approximately 900 to 920 books circulating per week in our library, which is amazing. So as you can imagine, those books get circulated, they get worn out, they kind of start to fall apart. Between Mrs. McManus and Mrs. Schilling, we have quite a little book repair going on in our library, constantly being repaired, constantly being refurbished. And what we found out over the years, and Rennie McManus is great with this, when we look at the circulations, what are the students taking out? Nonfiction books. Always taking out nonfiction books. And one of the best parts about our CT library is we do have such a large collection of nonfiction books. Doing a little bit more research, not only the nonfiction books, a little tattered, but they're dated. Our average nonfiction book in our library is approximately 21 to 22 years old. So a lot of the information is not the latest, it's not up to date, and they're not in the greatest condition. And I think if you would ask any student at school, getting back to passion again, what do you like to read? They all say nonfiction books. They all gravitate to the nonfiction. So one of our proposals is to upgrade our CET library with our nonfiction books because it truly is something that's needed. And like I said, that affects every single child in our school because not only do they love books, they're drawn to the nonfiction books. They're excited about it. They're engaged by the nonfiction books. And we'd really like to see an upgrade of those nonfiction books. And
We've also seen a direct connection between what lessons are being taught in the classroom, whether it's a biography lesson or a science lesson or a social studies lesson. Kids eat off what they're being taught in the classroom, then they go to the library and they want to know more. So, you know, if they're right now, second grade is working on biographies. So of course the kids go to the library and they want to pull out as many more biographies as they can. And so we want to be able to put those materials in their hands to help them feed their intrinsic motivation to learn more about what they're being taught in class. So it's a beautiful way to be able to support their interests, their passions, and allow them to expand their thinking beyond what's just happening in the classroom. So we're hoping that, you know, this current budget supports all of these things, that in the end, you know, we see the connections to the strategic coherence plan and the district's essential questions, but really what it comes down to is us knowing our kids and knowing what they need and want and making sure that we are doing our very best to put those resources, materials, and that environment in front of them so that they can grow and learn and then make their way to our other amazing buildings. So thank you.
yeah, well said. Thank you, Karen.
You want to?
Sure. Okay. And this is a broader view of the budget. As you can see with our younger students, teaching is a larger component. And supervision, so that includes our support staff and administrative staff along with professional development. Let's see, a big one is psychological services. So this year we are absorbing the student assistance counselor that was from the federal grant. So it's bundled in, where in the other budgets, it's under social work, yes. So in this budget, because we've never had this component, it's bundled into psychological services. We're gonna break that out, probably by our next presentation. But that increase is the additional 0.6, correct, SAS at CET. And then our co-curricular is up to support our house system.
We appreciate it.
Was a bold endeavor. I remember you talking to us about it and I was like, wow, that's big, Sherry. And you've done a wonderful job with it.
And just the, and you said that the coach would be, the instructional coach, it would be a 1 FTE.
So we're looking at what it will look like at CET. So Laura and I took some time to meet and she shared her proposal and her rationale and all of it. And when we started to really dissect, so in a high school situation with their current schedule, it makes sense for a teacher to be able to say, teach period 1 and period 2, and then coach. But if you have an elementary school teacher, if I have a student in a first grade class, no kid, no teacher, no parent is going to want that teacher to teach from 8 to 10 and then move somebody else in that room. So it's not, it doesn't lend it, we're not the same structure. So we're looking at ways, in the end, it will be probably a 1.0. We're still talking about exactly what that will look like, but that model of having 2 part-time,
Right.
it doesn't, the math doesn't add up as equally at CET just because.
And
of
that
our
fully,
classrooms.
that fully makes it. Where, does that fall within the teaching budget or does that fall in the curriculum development?
That's
part of
in
the budget?
teaching.
It's in teaching.
It's in
Okay.
teaching. Yeah, the curriculum development is similar to what John.
What
shared about the
John
other
shared with the
budgets,
other,
yeah.
others.
So that raises the question to me that you show a 6.1%, $270,000 increase in the teaching portion of the CET budget.
So that includes
That includes line increases based on moves of lanes and moves of steps and so on. So I'm just wondering, since that is 6.1%, and as I recall, increases in the other two schools were also,
8 and 9.
You're higher, yeah.
yeah, or even higher. Is there an expectation of differences in the number of sections in each of our grades? K
We're
to
not there
4?
yet.
So
Well,
we think,
because we have to look at the budget, if you're hiring somebody to add, and you've got those other things, but that portion only goes up 6.1%, am I
no,
missing something?
so we're looking at the same number of sections. There will be different configurations, as opposed to this year, we're going to be, adding another section in.
So right now we have 6 sections of kindergarten and 5 sections of every other grade level. That 6th section of K will go to 1.
And
And everything else will stay at 5,
okay,
depending on K enrollment.
okay,
Still have to look at K.
but that.
But that's an unknown.
Right, that teaching number and the 270,000 increase incorporates one additional FTE plus all of the lane and step
Correct,
changes.
And also a portion for leave replacement.
Yeah, all the things that we normally have to consider or plan for. Okay.
I have questions. Going back to what you were talking about with the second grade or in Gillingham instruction for the teachers. As you replace their method of instruction, so you'd have K 1 and 2 all teaching Morton Gillingham. It's that 30-hour initial instruction, is there continued professional development?
It's
past that?
the continued professional development we're doing in-house
In-house.
with collaboration and peer visitations and sharing of practices. So there's, once you've done the 30 hours in a week of the summer, that's all, they still have access to all the online resources and printable books and stuff like that. So they get that when they register so that they can continue to access, but we don't have any further affiliation for additional training for the teachers that were already trained.
Okay. And then when you were talking about replacing the current system and not having the queuing books, are you supplementing with? Or are you getting rid of all the?
We're
queuing books?
moving away from the queuing system books being the primary instructional resource. So what we have found in a lot of our discussion has taught us that the science of reading is based in phonics. Right now, our books do not support that. But what we have found is once a kid, say a kid is really, really good at phonics, but they have trouble with reading comprehension. So then we do have to teach those other skills as other things in their toolbox. So if we have a child who can decode wonderfully, but then when you ask them a comprehension question, they don't know what they just decoded, then we will rely on those picture cues, those context clues, say the first, those other cueing. So those books will not go away, but they will not be any longer the primary source of instruction. So when a teacher pulls a guided reading group, the primary source of instruction will be those decodable books, but we will keep those because as we know, not every child learns at the same rate, the same way, and using the same practices. So we're not going to abandon them completely, but they will no longer be the primary use of instructional books, if that makes sense.
It does completely. And then with respect to the learning spaces, when you were talking about creating the vibrant and engaging spaces, I don't mean to compare the schools, but like in the high school, you're talking about changing the learning spaces with furniture. And that was similar to what some of the discussion was with respect to PVC. So I guess I want to know just what the cost element is of like creating the spaces or changing them through art versus like purchasing furniture.
I honestly think it's probably a lot less because we're not.
Right, but what are you paying for? Are you paying for like somebody to
artists,
come in and paint murals?
Yes, yeah, or materials. Artists and materials. And you're like, right now, we're working on, we have our first prototype that's about to go up in large pictures, like 36 by 24 pictures of our students, our faculty, our staff. And I think I mentioned this at one point earlier, we are actually trying to repurpose many of our plastic sneeze guards that we had from COVID and to mount them up as frames. So there is some cost in hardware for that, cutting them down to the right size, We do have a wonderful deal worked out with a local business to have the pictures enlarged at a very good price, but there is still a price involved in that. So it's more the materials and the expertise of the people who are doing it, are doing the work, so.
And then with respect to continuing the house system for the second year, the cost involved in that is also just the stipend for like.
That's, and supplies, consumable supplies. So what we've started to do, when I invite you, any one of you, to come to a Flex Friday day and actually walk through, go to the different houses where they're set up and look at some of the activities that the children are doing. I try to capture it a lot in my weekly memos, but it's not to be believed until you walk through and see what those house leaders have set up for the children to do. It's absolutely unbelievable. So what we've started to do is build kind of a repository of things that people have purchased and they've used that can be used again by another house for the same activity. You can't repeat the same activity in a house from year to year because the kids are the same. So now we're starting to like build up our supply and recycle that stuff, but some stuff is consumable. After they've used it, they can't use it again. So even if an activity was like a big hit and everybody loved it, you have to then go buy the consumable products again. So it's the stipends, and it's about maintaining supplies for them to be able to execute what their passions are. I will tell you that with all sincerity, that when I see what those house leaders are doing with those students during those flexible Fridays, they've exceeded any expectation I could have had for the engaging experiences that the kids are having. It's unbelievable. So I really do invite any of you to come on a Flex Friday from, it's basically 8:30 to 10:30. And if you walked around the building, it's magical. Magical. Yes, Neil.
I'm looking at the CET calendar, which on the website doesn't indicate, unless I'm missing it.
The last.
They're the last Friday of every month.
So on when there's 5 Fridays in the month, like there is on some months, it's still last Friday.
It's good, like, so tomorrow, for example, though, because the last Friday in February happens to be February 17th. That's the last Friday that we're in school, so it will be that day. But we are doing things a little different tomorrow because we haven't come together as a whole school in a long time for house meetings. So we're actually doing an assembly instead of the traditional house meetings, but end of March, end of April, end of June, you will see
And in May,
it, yeah, April, May, yeah.
probably not the end of June.
No, but we are doing it. We are.
You're gonna do it Friday before.
Probably the Friday before the last Friday.
Not the last day of school?
That's a half day anyway. Although, so I do, any questions that you have, to see it though is really the key.
I agree. I think see it in action would answer all the questions and maybe pose a few more.
Any other questions? Other questions?
All right, so before we hit the last slide, spoiler alert, this is the last slide. So just like to really just actually reach out and talk to my colleagues at the buildings and say, it's really impressive to see how you're planning to use monies from the budget to take those core curriculum, those core student learning experiences and really think about how to meaningfully bring them to another level. I'm very, very happy to share what I think is a very, very vital core curriculum experience for our students that really moves throughout all of our 3 schools when we're looking at music education. I present this slide as a way to try to depict a staffing reality. When we're looking at music teachers, we're basically looking at teachers that have experiences really in one of 3 different ensembles. Those teachers who are really our chorus teachers as represented by a microphone, or an orchestra teacher as represented by a violin, or a band teacher as represented by the tuba. And what you see is basically that we have to cut up some of those instruments because those teachers have got to go from one building to another to provide the continuum of services. The real essential is that we're providing a really good basic general music experience for the first 9 years that a student are within our district. And if you look at CET, that's really represented by that big microphone, and that's Marlena Horton. And she's able to really be in CET full-time. She's able to deliver that general music education. She's able to deliver upper elementary choral experiences. You see Sarah O'Brien as a piece of that violin. With that small piece, she's able to introduce strings at first grade and continue through fourth grade with the help of a little bit of part-time assistance. She's paid on an hourly rate, and that's Patricia Santos. And then Jazz Zante is the top of that tuba right there, who's really introducing our fourth graders to their first experiences with instruments. Then when we move to PVC, that big tuba is Lisa Dwyer. She gets to do band full-time. So that means she's able to do her ensemble fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade, do pull-out lessons to really give trumpets and flutes and drummers their individual attention so that when she has those ensemble periods, she's able to put together a real quality performance. We see the bottom half of that violin, and that's Sarah coming to the PVC, to the middle school for part of the day to do her orchestra. The tuba now is actually that point forward tuba. That's Jazz. She's actually coming back to be a general music teacher. She's doing general music classes during that time. She's doing no band during that time, although that's her expertise. And then that .80 microphone, that's Michael Katz. He's doing both chorus and he's doing general music as well. So then what's interesting is when you get to high school and you see there's .4 of a band teacher, .2 of a chorus teacher, and .2 of a strings teacher. And what that really allows them to do is basically meet for 1 or 2 periods with an ensemble, everybody together, and do their best to really deliver a quality performance for the time of their lives when our kids during high school should be really at the apex of their K-12 musicianship. And what really tends to happen is that something's missing. And what's missing is that if you look at most any high school, in addition to ensemble time, teachers will have time to really meet in sectionals, in smaller groups, pull all the tenors together because they really need to work on some harmonies, pull the cellos together because there are some songs with a very, very tricky run and fingerings that really need some dedicated attention, or, really, spend some time with those drummers because in band, if they're not, keeping tempo, the whole band's going to fall apart. And we don't have that. And it really is to a detriment to our music program. NISMA, which is the New York State School Music Association, levels K-12 music on a 6-point scale from level 1 to level 6. To give you an idea, 6 is very difficult music, but if you want to be a contender for all state, you must audition with a level 6 piece. With the current status and talking to Jazz, she's not able to get our band right now above a level 3. And quite frankly, not to disparage our musicians who are dedicated and doing their best, but that's really middle school music. So we see that there is a need, and in our budget, we are saying we really need to do something to address this issue by adding a full-time, extra full-time musician to the K-12 staffing. Exactly where it falls, and this hopefully not too confusing graphic to really bolster is something that we are working with our building administrators and our music department team to find the best solution. But one of the things I would be very, very proud of with the passage of this budget and the securing of another music teacher is our capacity to really address what I think is a problem and really create a situation where we're able to look at our K-12 music experience for these performers and really have it end in a far more positive place. And I said that was the last slide.
You did.
So
Does anyone have questions?
I do have a question. So is your proposal to add, to work with what we have to allow access to the high school to have a full-time teacher, or are you looking to add?
So really, we have a situation where we've got some real good high school, talent, spending a good amount of time doing general music, and not to diminish the general music at PVC. It's a great experience, and it's something we want to think about how we continue to add better musical experiences. But it seems one of the strategies we will look at is to get somebody who could relieve Jazz and Michael, to get them to have more time in the elementary school by covering some of the general music sections at PVC. It also seems, in addition to general music, if you just sort of look at the dispersion of instruments, that there's only basically one orchestra teacher. And that maybe to get somebody who could do general music at PVC and teach some strings would then sort of also give orchestra, I think, some of the attention that it deserves as well.
The
would
high
be the
school or
additional.
PVC? It would be someone additional at the high school.
It would be somebody definitely additional at PVC to cover general music, to free up Jazz and Michael to have more time in the high school.
I see.
And then it would be somebody who most, could potentially, we're really looking at the idea of, in addition to the middle school general music experience, somebody with strings who could then really supplement what Sarah O'Brien's doing, basically in all three buildings.
So really you're saying that because there's kind of three, and I don't want to call them silos, but three different needs, it's going to be very hard to figure out how to move the blocks we now have and bring another block or blocks in to fit.
That's right, but we've had some good conversations. I think we're coming up with some good ideas. And I think we're getting pretty close to being able to really put a posting out to attract some talent.
Is the cost of that extra FTE already reflected in the building budgets, proposed budgets?
It's reflected in the overall budget, yes.
But not in the three.
It is, it's kind
It
of
is in there,
split
okay.
out because
Okay, yep.
a decision hasn't
Yep.
been made yet. Sure.
And that additional teachers. That wouldn't be additional classes, that would just be additional student access, like how would that work out in the schedules for?
So it could be additional course offerings depending on how much, like, let's say a certain chunk of the FTE ended up in the high school. We'd probably allocate a certain amount of that FTE to pull out lesson sectionals that John mentioned. And then also leave, if there is room, leave open the opportunity for additional courses like music theory and things like that to add to our music program, depending on how much FTE we would get at the high school. So it does have potential for growth too.
And it strikes me it's got potential growth in some of the transdisciplinary things you talked about. If we wanted to do some kind of high school opera as literature and do a combination
Yeah.
of music and could be social studies and English and yeah,
Music
so
theory and history or something came up also.
I have a suggestion for next time. If you look at the total increases for the building, that's rough math, 1.6 million. 1.4 roughly is in the teaching category. If you can break it down between, what's the contractual increase, what's the step increase, what are the new positions, and then hopefully everything else is, I think it'll add a little bit more clarity to what's in the budget. Because people look at it as like, it's gonna jump out at folks. I think it'll just help. Provide a little more transparency into that line.
But you know what I think, maybe possibly splitting it out. Remember, these components are comprised of supplies, materials, BOCES, et cetera. So I can look at splitting it out, sorry.
Yeah, or anything, any other way that you think would make sense
Yeah,
for folks just to break that number down a little bit.
got it.
I think in the old report that we used to have years ago, there was a slide that broke out instructional by by what was salaries versus what was
Yeah.
other expenses.
I don't remember ever seeing one that actually broke out the salaries by what is contractual increases, like broke out the increases of the salaries based on what is contractual versus what is just increase in FTE.
Yeah, that is a hard way to present it. only because of
It's a different dimension.
confidentiality and some of the smaller codes, like if you look at a smaller code, everyone could say, I know that's A, B, and C.
Right.
So, but the presentation that you're referring to is what's more aligned to the superintendent's budget when we have the overall budget, which breaks it down by object, which is salaries, supplies, materials, BOCES services, durable materials, et cetera.
Right.
And just, I guess, from my perspective, you're looking overall at adding like 4 positions as a district,
Correct.
correct? Could we just look at how many we've added in previous budgets going back a couple of years?
I would
That's
suggest,
hard to show. Well, John,
There's a lot
yeah,
of replacements and.
from a
yeah.
personnel perspective, we can, but
Not from a
Remember-
personnel perspective, from like creating a new position. So like when we added the pedagogical coaches at 0.6 at the high school, and when we added some of the social work elements at PVC. Yeah. Does that make sense?
yeah, absolutely.
And if there's anything that dropped off, obviously.
Yeah, I'm not talking about like retirees and
Right.
new hires. I'm talking about like actual new positions.
and I think that probably would be good for going back. As no more than, but maybe as much as 5 years, because there's been a lot of change. You know, we went through a COVID period, we went through a. Another, but it may well be things that are pretty much easy to find in prior year budget presentation. But just to kind of have it there, so
The caveat there is that not all those positions were net positive to the budget. Like some of them could have been funded by a retirement or funded by.
Right.
Yeah, that's the.
Yeah,
That's what gets.
Right, I'm talking about
This
a
is
new
but-
line
but
item.
this was really not necessarily on the line, like it wasn't on the budget.
It isn't
it
actually
was
like
really-
a cost issue,
Yeah.
right?
Right, it was on
like
the
yeah.
new positions. Great.
What's our focus? I'm interested in this from understanding how our
Trajectory,
focus tracks.
Yeah.
It's
Right,
kind of my,
right. How does our
Independent
focus
of cost.
shift over, independent of cost, how does our
Where-
focus shift over time? Where are we expanding our focus and where maybe where may we be decreasing our focus? Because there are things that become less popular, less, you know.
Less areas of focus.
That also takes place in co-curricular, by the way, where clubs come and go over time because of varying as the interests of the students change.
Any other questions? All right. Well, as we finish up, I just wanted to take a minute to thank you all for joining us tonight. It was wonderful to hear how each of the building budgets really so closely aligned with the guiding questions and the strategic plan work that's going on in the district. I think it was very clear to see where that was the clear focus in every budget. So I appreciate that. Thank you for spending time with us and answering our questions. And we look forward to continuing this process with our next budget update on March 2nd.
Just one
Yeah.
other observation, which I say frequently. What I really am impressed with each of these building budgets that we have heard from you folks for a month is the relationships that have been fostered, built, and strengthened to treat our teachers as partners and professionals in our efforts, which I know, Michael, you said after we came back and we started working on this and the kids I remember you saying this at a meeting 3 months ago, the kids were so enthused by seeing the energy and positivity of their teachers when they started rolling out their passion projects and talking about that. So I appreciate that because I think we are looking to develop a system where everybody is focused on the same thing, which is going to be for the benefit of our kids. And I like very much.
And I would just add one thing, Neil. Isn't it nice that we could talk about fostering increased energy without having to worry about Con Edison?
Well, thank you all very much. Thank you. Recommended action that the board adjourn this meeting at 9:51 PM.
So.
Second. All in favor?
Josh,
Aye.
me and Josh.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. All right. Everybody get home safe. And thank you to those of us who joined us, watched us on.